Hi, quick word before the video, and I have a chicken, so I know you'll listen. Now, if after this video's over, you comment and you get a reply from someone who appears to be me saying that you've won some kind of giveaway, they got my logo and everything as their avatar, it isn't me. I'm not running any kind of giveaway on any platform at all right now. So they're actually a dirty scamming con artist. Make sure you report that person as quickly as possible. Do not click any links. Do not follow them on any platforms. And in fact, don't even reply to them in any way. Just report their comment. It's not me, it's some jerk. Now, on to the video. What up, Wizards? It's Couch Dev. Yeah, other dev has been keeping me in the back room all season, but it's actually been a pretty good little break. He feeds me almonds every now and again. I mostly play Switch, but I saw some previews today I wanted to get on, and honestly, stand-up dev wanted to play Switch anyway. So we're going to talk about some Phyrexia All Will Be One previews today with Couch Dev and Igby. Igby's here, don't worry, I'm going to give you a cat. No matter what happens, you get a cat. But we got to get right on them previews because we got 24 cards to look at today. And a lot of them are lower rarity, but a lot of those lower rarity cards look better than some of the rares we have to look at today. So let's get started. But of course, drafty stuff first. But even the drafty stuff looks kind of good today. We got Bone Picker Scourge, Blight Belly Rat, and Necrogen Communion to look at. Bone Picker Scourge is just a strictly better win rate. We've seen a lot of these lately. 3 mana, 2 and a black for a 2/2 Phyrexia imp with flying, and Corrupted as long as the opponent has 3 or more poison counters, I mean to say. Scourge has Death Touch and Lifelink, so almost a build your own Vampire Nighthawk here, but not quite. Nice little limited dude though. Blight Belly Rat is 2 mana, that's 1 and a black for a 2/2 Phyrexian rat with Toxic 1, and when it dies, Proliferate. This rat's all that. It's got a lot of stuff going on for it. 2 key mechanics in the set on the same little 2-drop dude with a decent body in limited to start off with. So that's not bad for curve fillers, right? One of the stronger ones that I've seen, especially at common in the set so far. 4 sealed in draft. Now in standard, I'm not too sure about it, but it sure does do a lot of stuff. Cool to have a 2-drop that proliferates in your like Aristocrats deck or something. It's not terrible, but probably doesn't quite make the cut. Now Necrogen Communion is also 2 mana, 1 and a black as well, but this time you get an aura that enchants a creature you control, and that creature has Toxic 2. And also, the cool part here, when the enchanted creature dies, you return the creature to the battlefield under your control. Now in standard, we already have plenty of things that are like instant speed and cost 1 mana that just do this better than this card, so I'm not really looking at it for standard, but I will say in limited there's a nice little push-pull in terms of effectiveness here, because you might go to stick this on your creature and then they just remove it while this card's on the stack, and that's going to feel pretty bad. But if you can actually put this onto a creature successfully, then like suddenly you've offset removal, which is the second most important thing technically in limited, right? It goes bombs, removal, evasion, advantage, crap, depending on what analogy you're following. You could also be following bread rather than break, which is bombs, removal, evasion, advantage, dudes, depending on your telling of the analogy. But one way or the other, removal is one of the most important things you can do in a game of limited, so a card like this looks okay, you just gotta stick it. Let's keep it pushing and take a look at Transplant Theorist, Quicksilver Fisher, and Complete Devotion next. Theorist is 4 mana, 3 and a blue for a 2/4 artifact creature, Phyrexian Artificer, a mouthful, and whenever Transplant Theorist or another artifact enters the battlefield under your control, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. You can also pay 2 mana, put target card from your graveyard on the bottom of your library. I got a theory this card ain't so bad, but I'm probably wrong. It's not very good. But that's just a theory. I'm fairly certain that this card is terrible and it's just way too slow, even for Commander. I want to say this is a Commander playable card, but it's going to be way too slow for some people's tables, right at home on other people's, and that's where I want to play. This card looks good in your Commander meta. I want to come play with you guys. So it looks cool to me. I mean, it procs on any artifact entering the battlefield into your control. That's treasures, blood tokens, third path iconoclast tokens, whatever, So you could probably proc this a whole bunch, and if you draw too much, you just start putting stuff on the bottom of your library. If you're up against mill decks, it seems like a decent thing to be able to do. So I don't know. I kind of don't hate this, even though it costs way too much mana for what it actually is. Although, if this costs any fewer mana than it does, it might be a little bit busted. That is a good triggered ability. Mark my words, but don't mark him too hard because it's probably not a great card, but I kind of like it. That's all I have to say about it. Took me forever, but let's look at Quicksilver Fisher next. This is 5 mana, 3 and 2 blue for a 4/3 Phyrexian Drake with flying. And when it enters the battlefield, you draw a card, discard a card. Solid limited dude. Honestly, probably should have done Quicksilver Fisher first, right? Because that's about it. 5 mana, 4 power flyer. Draw a discard, sure. Take a loot, whatever. It actually seems like a very good limited creature I'm going to draft a couple of copies of, hopefully. But anyway, let's move on to Complete Devotion here. This is just 2 mana, 1 and a white for an instant. Target creature you control gets +2/+2 until end of turn. If it has Toxic, draw a card. So the white 2 mana +2/+2 combat trick of the set, and it's not a bad one either. I mean, how many Toxic creatures have we seen at lower rarities in this set? 700, something like that. Seems like a pretty high number is my point. So it shouldn't be too hard to draw a card off of this. And 2 mana +2/+2 cantrip. That's the tasty part of it, right? The cantrip is really nice. So I like drawing cards. I like doing it for a low amount of mana, and I like doing other stuff while I do it, like blowing my opponent out in combat. And like this card's going to be played as a 2-for-1 most of the time. You know, like it looks like it just replaces itself, but you're going to buff a dude in combat. They're going to lose their guy. You're going to keep your guy, and you're going to draw a card. It just seems really stupid to me. So I think this card is actually very good, but again, only in the limited. I'm unreasonably excited to take a look at Incubation Pod next. This is just a single green mana for an artifact that enters the battlefield with 3 oil counters on it. You can pay 4 and tap it and remove an oil counter from the pod to create a 3/3 colorless Phyrexian Golem artifact creature token. Activate only as a sorcery. I'm just going to start shortening this to create a 3/3 colorless PGACT or something like that, because this line of text appears on a lot of cards in this set. I'm sick of reading it, but I don't know. This is kind of cool, if only because Teething Wormlet exists in the format, and a couple other cards care about artifacts and stuff. It's just a single green mana for an artifact that doesn't pay you off for a while, but once it does, hey, you start getting 3/3s. Could be worse, especially in the late game. You know, this is just kind of sitting around until your opponent wraths you. And when they do wrath you, you get a bunch of 3/3s. I mean, 1 turn at a time, which is kind of lame. But all I'm saying is I don't hate it, because Teething Wormlet is a card that exists, but I don't think this pushes Wormlet into the stratosphere of standard playability. It's just kind of a cool card. Overall, it's 13 mana for 9 power, which is actually not great, but at least you're paying in installments, so it's something. But anyway, let's move on to Serum Core Chimera. This is a cool looking card right here too. This is 4 mana, 2, a red and a blue for a 2/4 Phyrexian Chimera with flying. And whenever you cast a non-creature spell, put an oil counter on Serum Core Chimera. Then remove 3 oil counters from Serum Core Chimera. To draw a card, then you may discard a card. When you do, Chimera deals 3 damage to target creature or planeswalker, but you can only do this as a sorcery. So it seems like 1 activation of this is very good, and you just bolt the thing off the table and you get to loot, and that's great. And you have a 2/4 flyer, right? You play this on turn 4, and then you have to untap with it on the table, and then you have to have stuff in your hand to put oil counters on it, right? You have to have the mana to play all those things. Maybe you only have the mana to double spell. Then you have to wait till the next turn. You have to untap with it 2 turns in a row to put another oil counter on it. And then when you finally do that, you actually manage to draw the spell because you're empty-handed. So you play it, and you put a 3rd oil counter on it. Then you draw a card, and you have to discard, even though you didn't have any cards in your hand. I know I'm a pessimist, right? But I just think this does take a little bit too long to proc in standard Magic at the very least, but it's not for standard. It's for limited. It's a 4 mana 2/4 flyer, which is, you know, not the best stats. You really like a 4/4 flyer or something, but still, it's not the worst stats in the world. It's up in the air. You like that in limited, and it can bolt a thing, and it shouldn't be too hard, right? I mean, there's a red-blue spells deck in like every single limited environment, and this one's probably not going to be any different. So again, you trigger this thing like once, or I guess you activate this thing just once, then suddenly it's definitely paid for itself. It's a good little dude, and I'm not going to deny that. Just a good old boy, never meaning no harm. Good old Serum Coat Chimera. Let's move on though to Vivisection Evangelist here. This is 5 mana, 3, a black and a white for a 4/4 Phyrexian Cleric with Vigilance. Hey guys, got an Orzhov 5-drop here, listen up. This has Corrupted. When Vivisection Evangelist enters the battlefield, and if opponent has 3 or more poison counters, destroy target creature or planeswalker an opponent controls. Holy crap, kind of, you know. I guess it's a really good payoff for poison counters. One of the best that we've seen in limited so far. I mean, I have sort of joked a couple of times that there might be an Abzan poison counters deck in standard, but it's becoming less of a joke every day, right? But this is probably, I mean, 5 mana is a lot. You know, if you're going to play 5 mana for a card in standard, it's got to be a very good Magic card. And like, I'm not sure this is quite on the level, right? To just, oh, I get a Necrotol out of my 5 mana play, you know, whatever. But at least, hey, the body's beefy. It's Wandering Emperor proof, which is like at least worth noting, especially if you're considering the creature for standard. But in limited, I'll pay 5 mana for a 4/4 Vigilance just because it's those stats at that rate. Like it's got to do something a little bit better, but this is way more than a little bit better. If the opponent has 3 poison counters, just like blow something up and get a 4/4. Like, let's go. That's pretty good. Let's look at Ichor Plate or Ichor Plate Golem here. This is 3 mana for an artifact creature. It is a Phyrexian Golem. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, if it has 1 or more oil counters on it, put an oil counter on it. That seems nice. And creatures you control with oil counters on them get +1/+1. Reading this card's text box is extremely perilous for me as a southerner. Really want to say oil counters. And, but whatever, dialects aside, accents don't matter here, right? It's an accepting place, but this actually looks really sweet, I wish that it said permanence with oil counters on them, but that's because I just always want more. Maybe it's a personality flaw. That could help. All I'm saying is that he has an Anthem effect in the oil counter decks, which is basically an auto-include, right? But putting extra oil counters on stuff could, offset the amount of turns that it takes to do cool stuff with your oil counter guys, or maybe give them more turns to be on the table or do cool stuff. So just an auto-include, cool little guy. And also, of course, Golem. I hardly know him. But anyway, Firewall Spawning is up next. A lot of people have been talking about this card today. This is 3 mana, 2 and a green for a sorcery. Create a 3/3 green Phyrexian Beast creature token with Toxic 1. Now, Corrupted. As long as an opponent has 3 or more poison counters and viral spawnings in your graveyard, it has Flashback, 2 and a green. A lot of people making a big deal out of the fact that flashbacks in this set. Why was flashback in this set? It's not supposed to be in this set. Yeah, so apparently Mark Rosewater has come out on Twitter and since settled all discussion that might happen and said that, yeah, flashback is deciduous. It's a fun thing to say. We used to say evergreen. I didn't know we changed that term. But anyway, yeah, apparently flashback is just going to be in sets, which is great because it's one of my favorite abilities, but still. Okay, it's a Call of the Herd. Probably not quite as good as Call of the Herd, to be honest. I guess the flashback costs a little bit less mana, so that's kind of nice. Or does it? Does the flashback cost 3? Yes, it does. So the flashback does cost a mana less than Call, and the creatures have a keyword ability. So it is technically better in some ways, but the thing about Call of the Herd was that your opponent didn't need a special condition put upon them to be able to flashback the card, so that was kind of nice. But Call of the Herd is, regrettably, it really wrenches my heart out of my chest to say this, but Call of the Herd is just not the card that it used to be, right? And I'm not sure that this will be either, but in the Toxic deck, it seems kind of nice, especially, again, after those Wraths. There's a few ways to restock in that deck from what I can tell so far, and this might be one of the more important ones. But on to one of my favorite cards of the day, and maybe the best, well, second best uncommon of the day. Let's look at Planar Disruption. This is 2 mana, 1 and a white for an aura that enchants an artifact, a creature, or a planeswalker. Enchanted permanent can't attack or block, and its activated abilities can't be activated. So, sorry, pacifism. Sorry, Grack. I apologize, man. I don't know if I'm ever going to see you again. I mean, I guess in the old school queue, we still got to play pacifism, the Mirage one and everything, but this is just like a much more strictly better, hey, I said the thing. That's my channel name, but yeah, it's basically strictly better pacifism in like a million ways. Like it enchants more things than pacifism. It makes the activated abilities unplayable. It's just 2 mana for this. Is actually a heck of a deal. I'm not sure that it actually sees any play in Standard. It's a lame thing to say, but there's a huge range of things that this can hit, and that's great. But it also doesn't really do much against Sheoldred. I hate to bring everything back to Shelley, I really do, but that's just kind of how it is. I don't control that reality. It controls me. So if this doesn't really shut down Sheoldred, I'm not really sure that you want to play the card. But, it's good. It's good in a vacuum. We're in the exact Standard where the card's just not great. But now we got to talk about Skullbombs, which kind of sound like cheap shots, right? But some of these actually look really good. They're basically callbacks to spell bombs from back in the day, which are still some people's favorite cards. People love spell bombs, man, and there's a lot of reasons for that. There were infinite combos with them and stuff. People love spell bombs, but how did they reimagine them for the modern age? Let's look at Furnace Skull Bomb, along with Maze Skull Bomb and Basilica Skull Bomb first here. The red one, we'll call it, Furnace Spell Bomb, is 1 mana for an artifact. They all are. You can pay 1 and sacrifice it to draw a card. You can also pay 1 and a red and sacrifice to put 2 oil counters on target artifact or creature you control, and then also draw a card. You can only do that as a sorcery, which is lame. It's a little lame that all of these activate only at sorcery speed for their second ability. I just want to say that I hate that, but altogether, I can find plenty of reasons for 1 mana artifacts in decks, right? Like maybe if there's a if there's a third path iconoclast deck or some other artifact kind of centric deck that wants to play as many 1-mana artifacts as it can, this is at least in the colors of third path iconoclast. So like maybe, but probably not. Let's look at Maze Skullbomb though. We got to look at all these. This is 1 mana for an artifact. You can pay 1 and draw a card and sacrifice it. Or you can pay 2 and a green and sacrifice it at sorcery speed to have a creature get +3/+3 and gain trample till end of turn. You also draw a card. I do like that the second abilities on all these also make sure to draw you a card, but also do something cool. +3/+3 at sorcery speed isn't amazing. You really like to be able to do that at instant speed, but even though you can't, still makes dude big. Whatever, who cares? Maybe this goes in the Teething Wormlet deck. It might even be better than the incubation, whatever it was called. Possibly, but we'll look at, I guess, the white one next. Basilica Spellbomb is 1 mana for an artifact. Look at that. You can also pay a mana and sack it to draw a card, but if you pay 2 and a white and sack it at sorcery speed, not only do you draw a card, but a creature you control gets +2/+2 and gains flying till end of turn. So another evasive ability tacked on there, right? Like with the trample on the green one, your opponent might see it coming, but they don't have removal, they just jump in front of it and still get trampled over. With this one, they might not be able to even block the guy that you activate the Skullbomb for. But still, I think that these are the 3 kind of weakest ones. Oil counters are kind of narrow. That won't go in like every single deck, right? And as far as the green and white ones, they're basically just buffs, which are good, especially in certain decks, but a little boring. We'll look at Surgical Spellbomb and Dross Spellbomb to finish things off here. Dross Skullbomb, I keep saying Spellbomb. Such a boomer. Okay, it's just 1 mana for an artifact. You can pay 1 and sacrifice it to draw a card, of course, or you can pay 2 and a black and sacrifice it to return a creature from your graveyard to your hand, draw a card, only activate this as a sorcery. So Raise Dead is this one. That's really not terrible, mostly in limited, but hey, in the right like artifact based black deck in standard, I could see this working out, but I just don't really think that deck exists, to be honest. So I'm not too sure about it. So we'll move on to my favorite question mark. I think it is. This is Surgical Skullbomb. Just 1 mana for an artifact. It's got all the same text as all the other ones. You can pay 1, sack it, draw a card, or you can pay 2, a blue, and sack it to return target creature to its owner's hand at sorcery speed, draw a card. We got a winner. In my eyes, this is the only one that really affects the board state, right? Like the black one kind of draws 2, which is really good. The black one's the only one that effectively draws 2. That's great. And the red one's just kind of there. The green and white one are buffs. They affect the board state, but not that much. This one, you could argue it's not that much either, but it bounces at least something. And I could especially see this in like the third path iconoclast or other like Saheeli sort of artifact based decks in standard, because it's just 1 mana to get on the field, procs and triggers all your artifact stuff, and also really has some good use once you just have 3 mana laying around. So I like this a good bit. It's my favorite of these bombs, and I actually think this might see some standard play, but not in like A tier decks or anything. But wake up, honey, we are in the rares. Here's Mind Slice Apparatus to start things off. 4 mana, 3 and a blue for an artifact with flash. At the beginning of your upkeep, put an oil counter on Apparatus. Instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less to cast for each oil counter on Apparatus. So this is sadly probably not good enough, even with the flash, Hey, Chicken's here, by the way. Igby's still around here somewhere. I think you can probably hear him snoring if you turn the video up enough. He's doing that, but anyway, I want so badly to like this, but maybe I'm just jaded. 4 mana does seem like a lot. Person in the comments who was like, you're still botching about 4 mana. I don't know if you misspelled that on purpose or what, but still, yes, I am still botching about 4 mana. It's an awful lot of mana even at flash instant speed, right? So, and then sure, if you play it at the end of your opponent's turn 4, which requires you to have not spent any mana on turn 4 up to the end of their turn. You can't counter spell, remove a creature, anything like that. Play a thing of your own. All of your mana, all of your land drops have to be 1, 2, 3, 4. On turn 4, you play this. And then you immediately put an oil counter on it, and then all your stuff costs less. You know what else kind of does this? Is Haughty Jin at 3 mana. And it wins the game in the air if you can protect it and stuff. So maybe I don't see it. It's a card that wants you to play like instants and sorceries and stuff, and yet it is an artifact in your instants and sorceries deck that also has to have creatures that actually win the game. I just don't. This looks like a commander card, if anything else, but even in commander, I'm just not like super sold on it. Somebody tell me, because I know that there's like 100,000 of you out there that like this card. Of course, only like 12,000 people end up watching this video, but like, I know that there's a lot of you out there who are going to love this card. So feel free to tell me in the comment section what your plans are. I'd like to know. So next, let's have ourselves a look-see at the Tablet of Completion. This is 2 mana for an artifact. You can tap it to put an oil counter on it, or you can tap it to add colorless. Activate only if Tablet of Completion has 2 or more oil counters on it. You can also pay 1 and tap it to draw a card. Activate this only if completion has 5 or more oil counters on it. This is kind of a reverse Maze Mine Tome, to me, at least, you know. Tome, you could go ahead and like immediately start drawing cards. It had the counters on it. You can take the counters off and draw the cards. Like a Reckoner Bank Buster is a good example because it's currently in Standard. But this, you can't draw the cards immediately. Costs 2 mana, just like Bank Buster and Tome. You can't draw the cards immediately. You draw the cards like 6 turns from now, which probably isn't great on its own. But if you're in a slow, controlling deck, then I think it's possible to pull that off without any proliferate tricks. But if you do have proliferate, card gets way better. So like I kind of don't hate this at all. I think it's a decent card. Is it a little slow? Yeah, I mean, yeah, 100%. But is it also kind of cool? I mean, people play slow artifact. People play Celestis, although Celestis probably draws you more cards over a game than this does. But I'd be interested in that experiment, but not interested enough to keep talking about the card. We got to move on here to a Mastercore sighting in a new set, everybody. Let's take a look here at Argentum Mastercore. 5 mana for a 5/5 artifact creature. It's a Phyrexia Mastercore, and it's got first strike and protection from multicolored. At the beginning of your upkeep, sacrifice Mastercore unless you discard a card. When you discard a card this way, destroy target non-land permanent an opponent controls with mana value less than or equal to the mana value of the discarded card. Whew, I just never get used to reading Mastercores, man. One of my first loves was Mastercore from Urza's Destiny. And I'm always fooled by them. I always think they're going to be really good. And this one, I think this is the one I'm right about here. I mean, obviously the original Mastercore was a ridiculous card. We all agree, but don't put it in your cube. It just ends games. But anyway, it's too much. But this card I'm not sure about. 5 mana, 5/5, first strike. That's already great. You won't hear me arguing about that. Not the worst rate. First strike is actually not bad. But of course, the bigger the power of the creature, the less it needs first strike in a way. But I still like it. This kills Sheoldred without taking damage, which is important because Shelly has Death Touch. So just everything comes back to her. But it does that. And if your turn rolls around and you discard a 4-drop, you can kill Sheoldred with this card. But probably don't really want to go discarding 4-drops, but if it comes down to killing Sheoldred or playing your Wandering Emperor, probably just discard the Wandering Emperor because they're never going to attack with Sheoldred anyway, are they? So, I don't know. Now I'm getting way too meta at this point, but still. I think the card is actually sweet. 5 mana is an awful lot. I've said it before. If you're going to play a 5 mana card in Standard, it has to be really, really good. But I think this is almost on the line. We've seen how good protection from multicolored was in the recent past with Stone Cold, Steve Austin a couple of sets ago. But of course, not every meta is the same. There aren't as many, I guess, multicolored things in Standard right now that could undo this, but there are a few things you got to worry about, and obviously this just blows through Corpse Appraisers and Blood Tithe Harvesters and stuff, which could matter. So I think it's all right. But anyway, let's move on, sure, to Kethic. Real quick, a lot of people really like this card today. Let's take a look at Kethic Crucible Goliath. This is 4 mana, 2, a black and a red for 4/4 legendary Phyrexian Beast. At the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice another creature. If you do, reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a non-legendary creature card with lesser mana value. Put it onto the battlefield, then put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Can I just say, I don't like it that much. I hate to have done this after the Mastercore that I really like and the tablet that I kind of like, you know. But this I'm not as hyped for. I guess maybe it's a commander thing because there's so many like pretty obviously awesome tricks you can get up to in commander with this card. I'm just so sure of it. Looks pretty slick there, but in Standard, I'm just not too sure about it, man. I mean, 4 mana is a lot. I sound like a broken record. 4 mana is a lot. I guess you get some value out of it, kind of, the turn it comes into play, but you really can't sack tokens to it. You can. If you just want to sacrifice trigger, which you might, that's a thing, or dies trigger, whatever, maybe just sack a token to it. It's entirely possible. But, you know, if the smaller thing, the thing you sack, if you sack a 1-drop, you're not getting anything either. So sack a 2-drop. Oh boy, I get a 1-drop. I get the one. Wait, is that it? Is that it? Have I talked myself into this card? If I sacrifice my 4-drop, I get the 1/3-drop in my entire deck. And somehow it's better than the 4 drops I'm playing. how does this work? If I sack a 3-drop, I get the one amazing 2-drop I'm playing in my deck. But then you can't play other 2-drop creatures in your deck, and it sounds like a not great deck, depending on what you're doing. So, I don't know. Maybe I haven't talked myself into it. I'm just not too sure. I hate the lesser mana value thing, but if it was worded almost any other way, it would be very, very good. The way it is worded, it's not. So it's just fine. It's just kind of an okay card. But again, if you're a Commander player, and I'm one of those sometimes, getting into it, I could see being really excited for this card, but I'm just not seeing too much standard playability on the thing. But I'm hoping to be proven wrong, because a Rakdos dude that sacrifices a thing every turn and then like conjures up another guy, he's awesome. Like those are cool abilities, but in terms of practicality, I'm just not sure it's quite there. Now, you may recall, if you can remember this far back, sometimes I can't, that when I was talking about Planar Disruption, I said that there was another better lower rarity card today, and I wasn't referring to the Skullbombs, although they're pretty cool. But let's take a look at easily the best lower rarity card of the set. Are we there? No, we're not quite there. I don't know that it's that, but this is easily the best lower rarity card of the day, such that it is way better than some of the rares we're going to look at. Let's look at Tyvar's. Hey, Tyvar's hanging out. It's Tyvar's Stand. It's got pretty cool flavor text for what it's worth, but let's look at what the card does. X and a green for an instant. Target creature you control gets +X/+X and gains hexproof and indestructible until end of turn. Just for 1 green mana, the guy gets hexproof and indestructible, which is probably how you're going to cast this card a lot of the time. It is, but also worth noting, card can end the game. It's instant speed, man. So if your dude gets through, if one of your dudes gets through and your opponent's at 5 or something, feel free to spend your 5 mana on this and get through for at least that last 5. So I just love that it's basically a pump spell that can just come out of nowhere, end games. That's one of its modes. I just can't wait to get down with this. I have come to the point where I kind of sort of dislike these like effectively 1 mana green spells that just say no, you can't remove my guy. Green counter spells or whatever. I think they're very, very good. Intensely so. And this is one of the better looking ones I've seen in a while. But we got one more card to look at today, and it's probably the card you knew would be my favorite card of the day, despite how disappointing it is in some ways. But let's take a look at Vran. It's Vran, everybody. Executioner Thane. This is 2 mana, 1 and a black for a 2/2 legendary Phyrexian vampire. There's some cool creature types. And whenever 1 or more other creatures you control die, each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. But however, this ability triggers only once each turn. First of all, cool flavor text, but I don't think your plan is going to work. Seems like a dumb plan, doomed to fail. But anyway, I think the card is awesome. Even though it says it triggers only once each turn, I still think this card is kind of awesome. I still want to try this either as the commander or in the 99 of some sort of aristocratsy thing. It just kind of has to be in those decks forever. And Wizards knows that they can print cards for those decks every now and again and just effectively print money. You know what I mean? Like those aristocrats loving suckers, they're going to buy and eat this thing up. And I do. Guilty as charged, man. I like the thing. And you'd think that of all people who would be super disappointed by the card, it would be me, right? So activate it only triggers once each turn. Jeez, but no, I'm not actually that steamed about it. I actually think the card is still really good. Like in standard, I'm gonna play it. It's like this Elisol Core, who is the other Blood Artist commander. So I'm basically a sucker for any Blood Artist commander at this point, if you can't tell. We've done a Judith commander deck tech. We've done the Elisol Core deck tech, which is maybe the best video I've ever done on the channel. Check that one out. But now we have to do a commander deck for this. just wait. But either way, in standard, which is the thing that I usually do talk about, I do like the card, and it doesn't have to trigger more than once each turn in most cases. We don't really have the kind of Aristocrats deck in standard that sacrifices like 4 things every turn. We just don't really do that these days. I wish we did. We've got plenty of things in standard that sacrifice like 1 thing a turn, like Braids sacrifice a thing at the end of the turn. There's also the 3-drop Rakdos guy, makes a 2/2 every turn. I'll find him. Here's a picture of him on screen. You guys know who I'm talking about. Pretty good with this guy. Just anything that like sacrifices 1 thing per turn, no matter what. Oh, that new 3 mana red artifact that makes a dude every turn, gets progressively bigger, and then you sacrifice that thing at the end of each turn, right? That's also good. Oni Cult Anvil. Jeez, Dev, how long did that take you? But still, there's plenty of ways to effectively sacrifice 1 thing per turn and get all the value you're going to get out of this thing anyway, right? So I do kind of like this. It also basically activates, yep, it triggers once per or twice per turn cycle. I just had to reread it to make sure. But yeah, you can effectively do 4 and gain 4 each turn cycle off of this, which is really very good. I think the card is actually way better than a lot of people are saying it is right now, just because they can't get over that last just awful line of text. But if it didn't say that, it would be too good, I think. And it's really hard to get me to admit that a blood artist would be too good, but that would be a little too, that would be frightening. Even at legendary, it would be a little much. But that's all, Ski Kowalski. We finished off the spoilers for Friday, and there were a whole bunch of good little things in there, man. There wasn't anything just like off the wall, nutso to butso, banana pudding or anything like that. But like there were some really solid cards today. So let me know what your favorite ones are. If any of my takes are wrong, you're going to do that anyway. I don't have to tell you, but just let me know how you felt about all the stuff and what your favorite cards from today are. Also subscribe. If you haven't done that yet, it's probably time, right? Why not? Come on, man. Just come on, subscribe. Aside from that, you can really check out the Twitch channel if you want to. We might be doing one more day of spoilers next week on the Twitch channel. You want to be following for that at the very least. Free to follow. Twitch.tv/SPMTGDev, or you can go to patreon.com/SPMTGDev if you really want to support the content around here. Helps me a lot, and I'm very broke, so I would appreciate it. But aside from that, that's basically all I got for this one. Just before you hit your lights, before you hit the lights on your way out, make sure you like the video. But I guess that's it for now. Just again, let me know how you felt about it. I will catch you cats later. I'm Deb from The Place. Thanks for watching, Wizards. Spread love and be kind.